everyone, this is RetroFuture and I have another Battleborn character review episode for you, and in this video we're going to be looking at Ernest. We're going to be looking at the UPR's demolition expert, the demo bird himself. We're going to be going over his skill setup, his helix loadout, his lore and backstory, and tips and tricks that I found to maximize this guy's effectiveness on the battlefield. So without further ado, let's get right into his basic skill setup. His first skill is called Power Egg. Ernest will deploy an egg-shaped beacon that will impart bonuses to allies in range. There are two modes that the egg takes form in. First is attack mode, which boosts attack speed by 25% to all allies, and then defense mode, which reduces damage taken to all allies by 15%. So the Power Egg is an augmentation ability. It's something that doesn't do any damage. It literally just sits there, and it will either increase your attack speed or reduce the damage you take while you're within its radius. I don't know the exact radius, so forgive me. Skill number 2 is called Explosive Charge. Ernest will throw an explosive charge forward, from his hand, and it will stick to objects, including enemies, and upon detonation, it will deal a significant amount of damage, and Ernest can detonate that himself. His ultimate ability is called Mind Grid. Ernest will throw the egg on his back forward, and it deploys a huge, cluster of mines that explode on contact when enemies walk over them, dealing a good amount of damage with each explosion. And it's a pretty fun ability. It's used to seal off certain areas and making it so that if enemies want to walk through here, they have to take a fair amount of damage. His passive ability is called Direct Hit. Enemies that are directly hit by a grenade from Ernest take an additional 15% damage from that grenade explosion. So if the grenade bounces and then hits an opponent or detonates near them, they'll take regular damage. But if it's a direct impact hit, they'll take an extra 15% bonus damage. His basic weapon is the standard UPR grenade launcher. It launches explosive canisters that detonate on impact with an enemy or after a short delay of bouncing around. And he starts off with 6 in the chamber, and then he has to reload 2 at a time. His special talent is the detonator. With L2, Ernest's detonator can be used to detonate the explosive charges, or if he's pointing at the power egg when it's deployed out in the field somewhere, it can switch between attack mode and defense mode. So Ernest has a lot of tools at his disposal to take advantage of, and you can play him in a more offensive and a defensive manner just based on his skill setup alone. And that's it for his basic skill setup. Now we're going to get into his lore and backstory and understand a little bit more about his character. So the first thing you need to know about Ernest is he is Sergeant Ernest Ingrid from the Menneck-B Demolitions Corps. On Menneck-B, he is from that planet, same as Toby, same as Benedict. He is he's pretty much a drill instructor from that. He is one of the trainers from the planet, and during its darkening, he actually refused orders to evacuate the planet. And he actually went deep into the planet and saved 300 civilians that were trapped underneath some rubble. He blew a hole in it, used his skill in demolitions, and him and his squad rescued a bunch of helpless civilians and made it so that they could escape the planet before the Varelsi were able to darken it completely. And for his act of valor, he received the Menneck Wings of Valor. Obviously, I'm pretty sure that's like the equivalent of the Medal of Honor, that we have here. He's also very familiar with Benedict. He knows Benedict personally. They apparently go way back, and apparently he's taken it upon himself to train the entire list of Battleborn. He wants to whip them up into shape, especially Benedict, because he knows Benedict is a bit of an asshat, and that it's a matter of personal pride that Benedict be whipped into shape and that he gets in line, because he knows that Benedict is a little bit of a rogue, and he doesn't like that. He also has a little bit of a personal story for Toby in that he understands Toby's problem with Benedict, since he also is a flightless bird. Toby and Ernest are both flightless birds, and Benedict likes mocking Toby for not being able to fly like he can. And so what Ernest does is he has a little audio log for Toby in that, he says, "Hey Toby, don't let Benedict get you down. Take this as a fellow flightless, avian. We've got passion that he does not have, that he could never even dream of, because we had to work twice as hard and be twice as clever and creative in order to get the job done, in order to keep up with the flying avians. So, always have that fire within you, kid. I can see that fire within you. Keep that fire within you, and don't ever lose it, or I'll have to beat it back into you." So he pretty much motivates Toby and says like, hey, don't let Benedict's taunting and trash talking get you down. Just stay strong and believe in yourself, and just don't ever lose that fire in your heart and your soul. And that's what I like about Ernest. He's actually, me being in active duty army, I can kind of understand the position of Ernest's character. He's a drill instructor, essentially. He's a drill instructor, very motivated, loves the Corps, loves the service, and is all about the mission. He's all about successfully accomplishing the mission. And that's one of the things I love about the most. I actually like his character. He's one of my favorite in terms of character. I'm not that great in terms of, I'm not that fond of him in terms of like playing with him, but I do like his character a lot. And that's really it for his lore and backstory. He's just a decorated soldier from Menneck-B. He does not like Benedict a whole lot much, and he respects Toby as a fellow aviant, being a flightless aviant, and being driven to succeed and surpass Benedict. And that's really it for this part. Now we're going to go over to the Helix, and I'm going to show you my Helix loadout for Ernest and how I like to set him up on the battlefield. Okay, so right off the bat, level 1, I can go with either one of these, Concussive Charge or Accelerator. Either one of these is good. However, I lean more towards Accelerator, since I like to use the Power Egg in attack mode more often than I use it. I like to use it more offensively than defensively. Concussive Charge is good because you can use it to kind of disorient enemies. I've actually been able to use it to knock an enemy back that was trying to flee from an opponent. I threw the charge over them, led them a little bit, knocked them back into my teammate that was chasing them, and it enabled my teammate to catch up to them and deal the finishing blow and get the kill, and I got the assist. So Concussive Charge does have uses, but I think Accelerator is slightly better in that you're able to take advantage of it constantly, whereas Concussive Charge doesn't always benefit as much as Accelerator can, at least not in my opinion. Next up, level 2, I like to go with Never Stop Shooting. While in attack mode, the Power Egg grants a reload speed bonus to all allies in range, including Ernest himself. We're going to take advantage of that and just keep reloading as quickly as possible so we can shoot as quickly as possible. The most important meal, an Accelerator, I'm not a huge fan of. The most important meal was definitely the one I chose until I unlocked Never Stop Shooting. But that's the setup I like to go with for level 2. Next up, level 3. I like to go with Drum Mag. Increasing the grenade launcher's magazine size. An increase in 2 grenades means I can fire more grenades before I'm forced to reload every time. Trigger Delay and Bomb Suit are okay. I just never really liked them as much as Drum Mag. Next up, level 4. I'm not a huge fan of either one of these, Boom Bonus or Chain Reaction. But if I had to pick one, I would go with Chain Reaction, just because detonating an explosive charge will also detonate other deployed explosive charges, but I usually detonate every explosive charge pretty much as I throw it. I mean, you can use the charges to try and set traps and stuff. That's definitely, you're definitely able to do that, but I prefer Chain Reaction over Bonus Boom. Next up, level 5, the old Razzle Dazzle. Direct hit marks enemies, and it deals increased damage to the marked enemies. Consuming the mark, deals, an additional 15 damage, and then the mark is consumed afterwards. That's not too bad. The old Razzle Dazzle isn't too bad, but I still prefer Expedited Explosives. Direct hit reduces explosive charges cooldown. So when you get direct hits on opponents, like anything, for instance, like those big fat minion bots, your cooldown for explosive charge is reduced by 2 seconds, and you're just firing rapidly, so you're just going -2 on cooldown, just hit. You can just, your explosive charge can come right back to you just like that. Like, I've thrown a charge, fired off, every round in my grenade canister, and I've had explosive charge almost immediately after the reload. Like, it can really add up to, and it can really help you in damage dealing, especially to a group of bots. So Expedited Explosives is my go-to for level 5. Next up, level 6. Reinforced Shell is the one I started using until we got Secondary Strike. Using Secondary Strike allows a mortar to rain down, and since we're throwing the explosive charge constantly thanks to Expedited Explosives, we're able to just constantly rain down damage. And I've had a lot of fun with Secondary Strike. It's cool to watch and stuff like that. It doesn't kill anyone a whole lot, but if there's a bunch of minions attacking, a bunch of your team's minions, you can just throw one of these into there, and, it'll deal damage to all the minions. It's pretty good for that. Next up, level 7. Either one of these is excellent. You can go with Rapid Launcher or Greased Canisters. I personally gravitate more towards Greased Canisters just because I want to take as much, I want to get as much of the reload speed as possible. We've already got an additional 20% thanks to the level 2 augmentation in our Power Egg. Now we're going to get even more reload speed, so we'll be able to just quickly reload, and we'll just be able to keep up the pressure and keep attacking. So for level 7, I prefer Greased Canisters. Next up, level 8. You can go with Over Easy or Rotten Egg. Either one of these is pretty useful in that you can actually defend. It can be used defensively, but when the egg is in attack mode, that's when it's able to deal damage. Hard Boiled increases the damage reduction boost imparted by the Power Egg, which when it's only in defense mode. However, Over Easy adds the defensive shield for attack or defense mode. So Over Easy is more applicable in all circumstances, whereas Rotten Egg and Hard Boiled are used one for attack only and the other one for defense only. So I like to go with Over Easy for level 8 rather. Next up, level 9. I prefer Shrapnel Burst, increasing the damage dealt by explosive charge. Since we're throwing explosive charges as often as we can just deal more and more and more damage to our opponents. So that's what I prefer. I prefer Shrapnel Burst over Bombastic Blast. And finally, level 10, I like to go with Gridlock. Enemies that are damaged by Mind Grid are slowed for a brief time. So this makes it so that you can deploy it, and when an enemy turns the corner and starts running into these things, they're going to have a hard time getting away. And you can just keep pounding them away. Your teammates can jump on them and ambush them. So I prefer Gridlock for level 10. And that's going to do it for my Helix loadout. I've had a lot of fun and success with Ernest. And now we're going to move on back to the gameplay. Okay, so when it comes to gear and equipment loadout, I prefer to focus on Ernest's reload speed. His reload speed is already fairly decent thanks to the augmentations we've already done in the Helix. However, I choose to give him gear and equipment, such as the magazines to increase reload speed, and I actually have body armor that does like 5% damage reduction, but also an increased reload speed. And I just try to focus on Ernest's reload speed. I try and take advantage of it, have as little as downtime as possible, so I can keep pumping out grenades. That's all I consider Ernest to be, is to be back row support for the front row of your opponent, for the front line. So, you know, I try not to get real close to my opponents. I always try to keep at a safe distance and just harass my opponents with grenades. And the thing I don't like about Ernest is, like, I don't think he has much defense in terms of, like, close range. You know, if a melee character gets close to Ernest, he's pretty much, at that point, you have to run away. But you always want to find a fair distance. You know, to someone, you don't want to close the gap unless you already have the advantage. Like right there, I had an advantage. But one of the best things I like to do with Ernest is to set up a good position and just use the environment and just spew out endless grenades. Like what I'm doing right here, we're defending. We've already lost the first point on incursion. But here, I remember this game very well. We did not lose the second point. They never got the chance to attack our second point because we held up such a good defense right here, because we were able to take advantage of the terrain. And Ernest was just chewing through the opponent's health. You can see my reload speed is very fast. I'm able to reload all 8 grenades very quickly, throw explosive charges. This is what I think Ernest is meant for. I think Ernest is meant to help support the front lines by staying in the back, throwing out an endless stream of explosives, and just chew away at the opponent's health and support your teammates from the very back. And every now and then throw a power egg to either just catch your opponents off guard or to protect Ernest himself if you want. But Ernest is actually very good at supporting your teammates from the back, so when you're trying to push or when you're trying to defend, I prefer Ernest be in the back of the formation, behind the melee characters and even behind the healers, like where Miko or Alani or Kid Ultra would be. I prefer Ernest be back behind them, or at the very least next to them, but never in front of them. Never near the front line. I don't think Ernest excels there. I think he excels more in the back of the formation, where he can kind of line up his shots and try and control choke points with his Mind Grid or with his Power Egg, and just spewing out constant grenades endlessly, and then throwing an explosive charge every now and then to catch your opponents and deal damage to them. You know, Ernest does very well when he's able to just constantly shoot grenades out and not have to worry about being attacked. If you do get challenged, if you find yourself face to face with a melee character like Phoebe, Wrath, Galilea, Deandy, Atticus, I strongly recommend that you try and gain distance. Keep your, do not try and close the distance on them. Try and back up. Always try and have someone on your team in front of you. You don't want to be leading the charge with Ernest, but you want to be supporting the front lines as often as possible. Throw out your power egg every time it goes down. Put it in advantageous spots where it's hard for your opponents to damage it so that you can keep reaping the benefits of it while it's not in their line of sight so that they can't quickly destroy it. I found that offensively the power egg is very useful in helping your team push. I don't use it in defensive mode. I've tried it in defense. I never really excelled at it. So I prefer to use Ernest in more of an aggressive and offensive manner in terms of supporting the front lines constantly by using my power egg to increase my attack speed and reload speed, and just by constantly throwing a hailstorm of grenades towards my opponents. And that's really how I prefer to play Ernest. I prefer to play Ernest, in a way that makes it so that my opponents are not able to go to the front lines and attack my allies, unharassed. I try and bombard them with as much as possible. Firing my grenades and throwing my charges into adds is an excellent way of also doing group significant damage. Be good at learning how his grenade launcher shoots. That's one definite thing I had to learn, is try and get the arc down, trying to learn just how quickly I can, how high I have to aim and stuff like that. It can be difficult to nail the direct impact hits at range, but I definitely recommend that you just be patient with Ernest and try and land those direct hits, try and be as accurate as possible, and just chew through your opponents. Set up the mine grids in advantageous spots where you're trying to ambush your opponents. That way, if they, like right here, if my opponents try to retreat, they're walking right through their minefield, and they're going to be taking a shit ton of damage as they do so right there. And that's pretty much what I like to do with Ernest. I like to be kind of a tactical, ballistic, supporter. I like to play smart, and I like to support my teammates and the front line. If you're a little too ballsy with him, though, you can die like I did right there. But all in all, I would say that Ernest does best in the back of the formation, around where the healers are, preferably behind them. I try not to get anywhere near the front of the formation if I can allow it, unless we have a strong advantage, or if I'm trying to throw down my mine grid and catch my opponents off guard, like you see right here. But I try and stay in the back of the formation, only push when we have a very good advantage, avoid melee characters, and take down all the adds and bots that you can. His explosives are great at wiping out waves of little minions. So try your best to stay alive, stay in the back of the formation, constantly bombard your opponents, and that's how I like to use the egg and Ernest in an offensive manner. Like I said, in a defensive manner, I'm not that good with him. I don't excel at that at all, so I just stick to my guns. And you should have a lot of fun with Ernest, at least offensively, with the tips I've given you here. You should have a lot of fun with him, put up good numbers, and that's all I've got for you in this gameplay in this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see you guys all later in my next video. This is RadTechShoe signing off.